Grand Dawning, Great Rising. Welcome to another edition of 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. Brought to you by the Cleveland Observer, the voice of the community here in Cleveland, Ohio, and parts of Northeast Ohio. Welcome to the show. We have a great show lined up for you today. We have a very profound guest. And Brother Antonio, I listened to the broadcast that we did back in January.
Mm-hmm.
And what this brother was putting down, he was giving us history that we don't ordinarily get to. So I think it's really important that we hear his voice, and I thank you for bringing him to our consciousness. And I have an intention of posting a link to that show on this show so that people can go back and watch that show and get a real good taste of history. So with all that said, why don't we go ahead and welcome him to the broadcast? He is Sekou Kelleh. He is a Liberian living in Canada, and he just shared with us that he's going to be making a journey to the continent in the month of July. He's going to be there for a number of weeks, and I don't want to say we're jealous, but we sure would like to be there as well. So welcome to the show, my brother. And Brother Antonio, if you would like to begin, we would welcome that.
Yes. Well, again, this is we're gonna make this our featured brother. Yeah, he's an upcoming scholar. I mean, we got to really look out for him. This young brother, I first seen him on Sarnetta and going through those debates and lectures, and me and my brother was just impressed by. Then found out he was a Liberian as well. So I got some Liberian background or connections at least, and so I had to have the brother on. But definitely, we need brothers like this to. The old guard is getting older. You know what I mean? So we got to have some people to replace the old guard, and please be on the lookout for this brother right here, because he's fire, he's up and coming, and he's very knowledgeable. So we definitely appreciate him spending a little time with us to depart some good information. So my good brother, so much is going on. I always make a statement that I can't afford to just sit back and relax being retired, because, usually like my father or somebody would go in the garage and start making cabinets and, don't have to worry about nothing. But unfortunately, I can't do that because things are going on in this country, things are going over on the other parts of the world. And so we have to stay abreast. But people know what I love to talk about, and I believe it's Black folks' salvation is Africa. I'm gonna keep beating that into your head until you understand what I'm talking about. Because if you have been paying any attention to what's going on in Africa and that side of the world with BRICS and things like that, you would know that this is a global change going on. So I wanted to get some people who had or someone who have some connection and some resources over in Africa. So let's talk about that. Why we paying attention as usual? What's going on in the politics that's going on in this country that may be driving us to look at Africa, and what we should be doing. Like our good brother, Dr. Whitaker, always used to say, let's have a plan B and a plan C. So my good brother, any updates on what's going on over in the motherland?
Yes, peace and blessing. It was going well, but then I was hearing some breaking at the end. I don't know if it was from my side. So can you hear me clearly? No breaking?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we hear you clearly.
Yes, we got you now.
Yeah, Antonio, your audio was breaking up a little bit. I don't think he caught everything that you asked him about. Okay. So he wants you to repeat the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just give us a rundown on any updates on what's going over on the motherland and how the politics over here may be driving us to look towards Africa.
Yes, peace and blessing, and greetings to the listeners. And I'm grateful once again for this channel 360 Info for bringing me on. And I'm grateful to Brother Antonio, the crew, the team here on this channel for always, inviting me here to come and share my thoughts. And also we learn and share ideas. So I'm grateful. And then to you, the audience also that are listening, and then trying to also piece the whole thing together. We are all in this journey together, and I appreciate you all, and I'm happy to be back again. Yes, there's a lot going on in politics. There's a lot going on in the global community. And we analyze issue from what we say from the African center perspective. Because most of the time, people think that there is something called objectivity in education, in science, and in politics. And that word is thrown out there, always confuses people. They say, well, you got to be objective. You got to be objective. Yes. When it comes to exact science in the lab, you can be objective to get a right result. But believe it or not, both science, economic, politics, nothing is objective. Everybody think from the perspective of their people. Even your geography is not objective. When you hear the word Middle East, Middle this, who makes it a Middle East? Because it's a Middle East for the Englishman perspective. When you hear up north, who made north to be up? It's the European perspective, because he lived in the north of the world, and he portrayed the north to be on the up, and then the rest of the world down. But the Egyptian presented the world as north being down and south being up, because Africa is in the south, and Africa is supposed to be on top of the map, and Europe is supposed to be down on the map. So that tells you that everything is viewed from the lens of everybody's perspective. So there is a Eurocentric perspective to the news, to the information you see around you, to the news you are watching. It is framed from another perspective, if you believe it or not. Nothing you read on the news is just objective. It is framed in a way. Even the wars in the news are framed in certain way. Okay, so for you to be able to have to mold your understanding. They are trying to make you to see things in a very specific way to satisfy their agenda. So be very mindful of that. So when we watch the world, when we see the economy, when we see the politics, we should be able to have an African center perspective. And when we say African center, don't get it twisted. If you live in America or you live in South or in the Caribbean and say, well, what is the Caribbean perspective, or what is the African American perspective? When we say the African center perspective, these words were coined by people like Moleki Sete Asante and all the other great scholars. We are speaking from a Black people perspective. Actually, that's what we mean. And when you hear the word Africa, some people get confused again. They say, well, I'm not African. Elon Musk is African because he was born in South Africa. The Arabs are Africans. Well, this is what we are talking about, looking at things from a very specific perspective. There is an African center perspective. We are referring to Black people, because there are people who came into Africa, lived there like the Arabs and conquered land. They are not Africans. Even if you ask them, they will tell you, we live on the continent of Africa, but we are not Africans. So when we speak of Africa, we are speaking of the indigenous people who have a spiritual, cultural, and genetic connection to that motherland. So we are not necessarily referring to people who are born there. I can go to China and be born in China. I don't become Chinese. Okay? Right. Even if Chinese gave me their passport, I can't confidently stand before the global world and say, as a Chinese man, I want to talk to you. People will go, wait a minute. Okay? So we have to understand that we can be American, we can be Jamaican, but we are Africans first. And that signifies a geopolitical position. It is a cultural position, and it is also a racial position. Whoever bring another meaning to what Africa means, that's their perspective. But we are giving our own African center perspective to say it means having a genetic, cultural, and spiritual connection to the continent. Not everybody have that. So again, I would say, read everything from the African perspective. How does it benefit me? How does it benefit Black people? What is in this for Black people? Even when your government makes a decision, your first thinking should be, how does it benefit my people?
Yes.
What is in it for my people globally? If you are not there yet, if you're not started thinking in that direction, then you miss the whole thing. You have to think of the survival of your people as a group. That is when you start seeing things very clearly.
Absolutely, brother. When you said that, you reminded me of something that Dr. Claude Anderson said. Quit looking at race as a color, look at it as a competition. So the Asians is trying to get as much as they can, the Hispanics trying to get as much as they can, the Jews. So that means that when you look at our race, being African American as a group, so you looking in the totality of you trying to, everybody's on the same team trying to push each other's up, you know. And the other thing that you said that you almost it was just like a revelation, what you were just talking about, that something that I was talking about to people. We're living a European experience right now. This is from their perspective, their worldview, their mindset. Everything that we're going through is from their mindset and their understanding of life. If they control all the learning institutions, schools of thoughts, the theology schools and all that, and you're learning from their perspective. It's not from an Afrocentric perspective that you're getting. So this is what you're living right now. And you pretty much said, so you have to recognize that. And what was critical that you said is that everything and all information that you're receiving from this point, you have to ask the question, how did this benefit Black folks? What Black folks, if you're not asking that question, it's lost. It's lost. Go ahead.
If I could add to what you're saying, brother Antonio, you talk about definition and the fact that countries in Africa were named by Europeans.
Yeah.
And so when citizens of those countries identify themselves, they identify themselves as, for instance, a Nigerian. But you know, Brother Sekou, being someone who lived there and has great experience there, people identify based on, I'll use the term tribe for lack of a better term, but I'm Igbo, I'm Yoruba. That's the nation that they connect themselves to, and not necessarily something that Europeans have given them to identify as, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah, so that the issue of identity, so the way it worked, you have family first. Then from your family, you have your community, the town you live, the people that share the similar belief, culture, and the landmass with you. Then you have a country. Then you have, your ethnic group. Then you go on. So Africans, yes, we do have our ethnic groups. But unfortunately, what has happened in the last 500 years is the weaponization of those ethnic groups, which were quite different from how it was in the pre-colonial period. In the pre-colonial period, ethnicity was not weaponized. In fact, you can switch from one ethnic group to the other based on marriage, based on where you moved, based on what empire that you lived in. So let's take the Wagadu Empire, for example, the Ghanaian Empire. So the language of the emperors was the Soninke language. So the Soninke language, it was the language of the emperor. That became the language of business and commerce. So you move from Mauritania, modern day Mauritania, and then you move down, cover many other, Senegal, part of Mali, all of that was into one empire. And people were divided. There were different ethnic groups, but there was no ethnic clashes going on because they just saw it as when you live in your village, so you are mostly to interact with your ethnic group. But when you move in the urban area, you speak the language of the emperor, which is the language of business and commerce. So people were, so you couldn't even tell what ethnic group the person belonged to, what they don't belong to. There was no fight going on. And everyone was represented in the king palace. Every group have their representative in the palace of the king. So when there is a discussion, everybody talk for their people and say, hey, my people in this part of the empire, they have this problem. And then the king say, okay, how do you want us to solve it? This is the way we solve it. And they support you to solve it that way. There was no competition or a type of brutal competition that we see today. What the European did when they came in is they said, okay, we will work with certain group against the other. So you see the Ashanti War that happened. The British have to arm one group against the other group and say, hey, we need slaves. These other groups are resisting. But if we can give you arms, capture them and give them to us, then we will give you arms to be able to control their territory. This is now a different dimension of the evil that have entered into the African psyche. And that created mistrust between different ethnic groups. And then it was amplified until when we have the modern states, the ethnic group don't trust each other. Mm-hmm. This is where now you have the Igbo don't trust the Yoruba don't trust the Hausa, because the Fulani became Muslim and he has to carry out jihad against the non-African who were not Muslims. So now the other people have to say the Fulani are dangerous. You got to avoid them. That created all those type of lack of trust between the ethnic group today. And today, our countries are not making progress because one of the problems is the ethnic group issue. Because you have a president who comes from one ethnic group, and then he appoints ministers that are from his ethnic group. Then the rest of the ethnic group don't trust them because they said these people are appointing people from their ethnic group and they are going to work against them. So that type of behavior is what we have today. But our empires didn't have that because they solved the problem from the root. Everyone had a representative, and the superior agenda or the general interest of the people is what is discussed. What is our collective interest? Mm-hmm. I think what the problem in Africa today is for us to go past ethnic group and look at race and say, I'm a Mandingo man, but when I travel to China, no one asks me whether you are Mandingo. What they see is a black man. Mm-hmm. When I move to India or I come here in Canada, no one sees me on the road and say, hey, are you Mandingo? No, they see me as a black African man. So this is my global identity. And this global identity which I have as a black African man, how do I use that in politics and in economics for my survival, the survival of my group? Because if I continue to hold on to being Mandingo, then I will overlook the general interest of black people in the world, which will in turn affect me. Because the Mandingo ethnic group does not have the resources and power and spread to counter the white race, to counter the Indian, to counter the Chinese. The only group that have the propensity to be able to do that is the black collective. The black collective globally, we have the potential economically to pose threat to the white, to pose threat to the Chinese, and to even dominate if we want. But if we divide into a little ethnic group, we become very weak, and even a small united group like Chinese can control us, no matter how many we are. And I experienced this. I will give a very short anecdote to be able to, bring this home. I was in Libya many years ago, when right after Gaddafi fell. And I was on my way from work one day in Tripoli, and I got captured by these criminals. And they said I have to pay some money, and I told them I got no money. So they kidnapped me and took me to some type of prison. And when I went there were a group of black folks that the Arabs have put in that building with just a little window, almost 300 of us. And I saw different group of black folks, Somalis, Nigerians, and different groups. And we were in there locked up. And the Arabs will come in the morning and say, hey, whoever, if you have family member to call to pay ransom, we free you. And everyone was calling their family. Some people got some money through, some people couldn't. And we were all trapped in there. But the Arabs don't sleep there. In the night, they take their cars and they leave us there. But because of the fear they put in us, we are unable to break the prison. So in the evening, I started thinking, how do I unite all these people in this room so we break this prison together and then we escape? So I try because I'm thinking, they are thinking how to get money to come and get freedom. I'm thinking how to free everybody. So I went to the Nigerians group and say, hey, how do we do this? So the Nigerians I talked to, they are like, hey, we are Muslim, and those other guys are Christian. I don't think we can work with them. If we tell them, they're going to snitch. So I'm like, are we discussing religion here right now or our collective survival? They say, well, because we are Muslim, the Arabs treat us better. When they bring food, they gave us, and when we pay less money to get free. So we don't want to jeopardize that relationship we got with the Arabs. So I said, okay. But what about the collective? All of us here, you are talking about you, Muslim, how you got a good relationship with Arab. But don't you see, even if you escape, that you will be traumatized, that you left almost 300 black people in this place and they are going to rot to death? They said, well, we don't care about that. I went to the Somali group. The Somalis said, we are not African. So I said, what? I said, Somalia is in Africa. You don't know that? They said, yeah, we know that, but we are black Arabs. I said, then why are you here then? Why did the Arab put you here since you are black Arab? They said, well, you know, the Arabs, because our skin is dark. I said, then you get it. Because your skin is black. So now why don't you work with that? That's what is used to put you down. So why don't you turn that around as an advantage? Why don't we work together? Why don't you see that your relationship with the Arab did not save you? Your shared religion with him did not save you. So why don't you use the last thing you have, which is being black and an African? Why don't you use that? They said, well, you are making some sense, but we don't think we can. So I said, look, let's break this prison. If I do it alone, it's very easy for them to run after me and capture me. But if 300 people break the prison and some go east, some go west, even if they shoot, they can kill a few of, but majority will be free. They will think twice again to put 300 black people in one room. Mm-hmm. So then when I started going around, then a Gambian guy called me and said, if you sleep in this jail here tonight, you're going to die. I said, why? As they said, the consultation you are doing, the information have reached the Arabs. And if you spend 2 nights here, you're going to get killed. Because while I was talking to the black folks, they were started informing the Arab that one guy is trying to set up. I escaped with one guy called Bello, which I'm hoping one day when I write my autobiography, I will write this story. I escaped with a guy, a Gambian Nigerian guy. His name is Bello. I think he's somewhere now in Europe. So I told him, we got to go tonight. So we dug a hole from the washroom. We dug a hole underground and we were able to bust out because it's a desert area, easy to dig. We were able to break that prison, just 2 of us. And we made it safely to Tripoli. And then we left that country. Most of them that we know in that jail, they died.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So this is not a made-up story. This is an experience. So when I came out of that, I begin to picture that this is the issue of the collective black people.
Yes.
In America, there is a group that's saying we are, I don't know what they call themselves now. Ado, we are
ADOS and Foundational Black
Americans. We don't want other black people here. Bro, the big picture here, whether you are foundational or not foundational, the power that oppresses you, it still exists. It is easy for you to build with your natural ally to be able to break through them to make yourself smaller. Making yourself smaller makes you an easy target. The white man will not respect you because you told him you are foundational black American. That will not change his politics and power dynamic towards you.
Right.
When Malcolm X saw that, he said we have to build forces with the African. It's not all the African that understand it either. But we got to find people with like mind and build a global force so that when something happened to black American, there is somebody in the United Nations that is talking about it and say, why are police killing black American? Or your interest is protected in the African Union. These are issues you need to fold. You don't grow by diminishing yourself into a little group. That's an act of cowardice. It killed people very easily. And that's what happened to us in that prison. So in summary, I'm telling you, The black man wants to be everything but himself. That's the
you hit it right on the nail on the head there. Absolutely. And I go so far as to saying, because psychologically where we at right now, we just want to be accepted. We want to be accepted. You know, this is the same play that they have done right over here because, you know, and I think it's all about, you know, our origins, you know, of identifying our origins. They have done such a great job in dissecting and fragmenting black folks' origins on where they think they come from and who they are. You know, if you can't get out of the gate right, meaning in deciding of what your ancestry is, your lineage and things like that, you out the gate wrong. Because we will never sit back and say, okay, collectively, let's do this. Because I used to say, well, you from Africa, you know, oh, no, I'm from Alabama. I'm from, and grown folks were saying they didn't get me or understand, dude, we talk about your ancestry, man, your lineage. Yes, you live in Africa and you had a couple of generations in Alabama, but what other landmass do you connect yourself to? You know, that's what's important. And I think that's been the key all along. That's been, you know, got us into this position that we are in right now. The same play, the same game that they've been running to divide us. So, and your thoughts there, Brother Sekou, how do we fix this? Where we go from this? Because to me, you know, that's why I put on some of the programs that I do, is that we got to learn to love ourselves and like ourselves again, because they have done such a great job. And, you know, you got grown folks, and Vince can tell you, grown folks, do they got houses in Africa? Do they got supermarkets in that? So I'm saying that psyche cut deep in us. And so I'm trying to make us love ourselves again and understanding that, hey, we taught the whole world and everything comes from us, all this knowledge and information and all the issues that we are facing right now, our ancestors have already solved. It's already there. If you just study the culture and understand, you know, it is there for you. Your thoughts, Brother Sekou?
Yeah, I think the solution, we have plenty of example of what the solutions are. But for some reason, we aren't ready collectively, our collective consciousness. I don't know. You know, it's something, even as I do my course the course I'm doing right now at the University of Psychology. And one of the reasons I'm interested in psychology is because I really want to understand the mind of the black man, how our mind was really full, and especially our leadership. Why is it acting the way it acts? Because when I look at even the animal kingdom, the survival, the animals that survive are those that really they take action. They survive with the practice. I mean, how do I want to put it?
Instinctive.
The nature of that animal, and they make sure that they hold on to their nature. A lion cannot be a lion if it starts acting like an antelope. If it starts acting like a deer, it has to have all the instincts of a lion in order for it to be effective and for its survival to be secure. It has to act like a lion. There is something fundamentally wrong, whether we like it or not, with the way black leadership operates. And even the black people as a group, we are missing something. And that the examples have been given to us, how our ancestors have done it and they survived. And somehow we are ignoring it. Let's go back to Kemet a little bit, Egypt. For Kemet to survive, the upper land and the lower Egypt, they came together and formed a state called Kemet. And when they formed that state, they created a culture so powerful that it lasted for 3,000 years. And that was because they have shared vision, they have shared understanding, they have shared goal to say that our vision, our spiritual vision in this world is to maintain Ma'at. We want to maintain true balance, order, and true reciprocity. And our society will be based on that. And they make sure that everybody had a place in the society. Everybody was catered for. There was opportunity for everyone. Being a Kemite was so important to them that they didn't want to die in any other land. So it was the collective identity that they held on together. And they survived for 3,000 years. Let's take the Inner Empire. Kush survived long after Kemet fell. Nubia survived. They built Meroe after that. They survived longer than Egypt because they held on, because Egypt got diluted eventually through mixing, through intermarriages, through borrowed culture were coming in. So they lost their identity and they died. When Kush fell back, it took on with the culture. It survived until it also lost that identity. When Christianity took over Nubia, they became Christian. Then eventually they became Muslim. What happened today? Sudan became one of the difficult places to live on earth because those who lose their self are prepared to die. When you lose your purpose, your nature on earth, you are preparing yourself to die. This is, in the black race right now, when someone asks me, what is the trajectory of the black race? And I'm telling you, if we don't make a U-turn, we are setting ourselves up for extermination. If we don't make a U-turn. And that U-turn is collective survival. How did our ancestors do it? We can think about it and see how they did it. Look at just little successful community within the black African community in America. Let's take the Nation of Islam. Yeah, we can critique the faith, but when Elijah Muhammad started it with that zeal and power, you saw how powerful it was. You saw how it brought people from on the street. You saw how black people became united. America was frightened by that little group because they could see black men with one mind, one vision, prepared to die for that vision. They were scared of them until they infiltrated it and diluted it until they started going to Mecca. Elijah Muhammad was not setting them up to go to Mecca. Elijah Muhammad was not building the Nation of Islam for them to start joining with the Arabs. That was not the intention. But eventually they started doing that and they lost the fire. You can say the same thing with many other our empires, how they fell. It is when we lose ourselves and start embracing other people, and then we start to destroy ourselves. So the black men today have to look at Pan-Africanism of Marcus Garvey was also headed to that. Marcus Garvey said that the black man must know himself. We must rise up and create something for our collective survival. That's what he started with the Black Star movement and the Pan-African. And today people look at that to say, oh, Pan-Africanism means nothing. Well, say that to people in the Sahel today. The Sahel region, which the Islamists are trying to overrun, the black people there have found out something that we've been saying all along that people don't understand. That nothing matters most than their African identity than their black.
Yes.
Nothing matters most. Because those who are fighting them, they find out where the light-skinned Tuareg and Arabs were the one who are sponsoring these people, including their European agent, to destabilize that region because there's a huge deposit of gold found in that desert that was supposed to transform those people into what you would call today the Gulf countries, the Dubai as they are. And collectively, the Arabs are sponsoring those terrorists. I'm telling you about Qatar, Dubai, Saudi Arabia is in this. All the gold you see in Dubai is coming from West Africa. Whoa. There is no Arab gold. They say go to Dubai and buy gold. All the golden buildings and streets and jewelries you see in Dubai all come from the blood of the African child killed in the desert of Sudan and in Mali and other places. So the black Muslims in the Sahel begin to realize, even if we share religion with these people, they don't really care about us. So what really matters is our blackness and our collective identity. If we don't get it right, we will continue to suffer. I'm Christian. I'm black, but I'm Christian. And my holy land is in Jerusalem. And Donald Trump is fighting for Christian. Therefore, I'm identifying. You are just a walking dead. You are dead, but you don't even realize. Oh, I'm a Muslim. I have to identify with the Arabs. We are fighting against Christians to protect Islam. I told them the last time Islam triumphed and built a global empire, like the caliphate, all black people in that caliphate were slaves. The last time the Muslim got a global empire, the Fatima dynasty, and all the great empire, you were slaves in that empire. Read about the Zanj rebellion. So you are asking for a black, the Islamic triumph of global community. When Islam triumph, you will be found at the bottom of that empire. With the Saudi will let you to lead an Islamic empire, that they will be subjects. The Iranian will let you lead an Islamic empire. They will be the subject. It will happen on a dead body. They won't let that happen. If there will be a global Islamic empire, you will be the cleaners. You will be the one cleaning the dining table. You will not be on the dining table eating with them. So the
Brother
black
Sekou
man needs to rethink about the politics, the religion of the world, and think about his own survival. So I'm saying for us to make it, to face this, to solve this problem, the question you asked me is for us to go back to Pan-Africanism. And Pan-Africanism well defined with our culture, spirituality, and understanding of global politics for the survival of black people. No matter our differences, ignore the petty differences we have. We are bound to have differences. The African American is different from the Jamaican. Of course. The African American have a unique experience than the continental African. Of course, you got to respect that. But do we have a shared history and experience? And do our collective survival, is it important to us? Yeah, it is. So why don't we work together? Why do you think the division is going to help us? In which way is it going to help us? I'm struggling to understand how it will help us. U.S. government pump billions of dollars to protect Ukrainians, but they won't give you $1 billion for reparation.
No doubt.
But does that tell you something? They are willing to pay billions of dollars to protect Ukraine, but they wouldn't sit down on a round table to discuss the injustice that was done to you. Recently, very important before I miss this, the president of Ghana, together with the leaders in the Caribbean, they secured a vote to describe, at the United Nations, we describe slavery as the greatest crime committed against humanity for the first time. You know how many countries voted against that resolution? United States, Israel, Argentina, UK abstained, and the European country abstained. All countries in the world voted that slavery, the transatlantic slavery, was the greatest crime committed against humanity. Before then, do you know the greatest crime committed against humanity? It was the Jewish Holocaust.
Yeah, the Untouchables.
The Holocaust was the greatest crime committed against humanity. Slavery, that was the suffering was higher than any other thing. The number of people involved, the duration, the length of the suffering, the intergeneration. They look at all that and say that was nothing. It was only the Holocaust that was the greatest crime. Now the Ghanaian president and the Caribbean secured that vote. But when I went to the internet, I found the Foundation of Black Americans. They said, oh, Ghana wants to take the reparation from us. And they were fighting over reparation. They are not even concerned with the intellectual reparation. For the global community to recognize that it was the greatest crime against humanity, that's a win for you. In fact, I wrote an article. My assignment for that week in the university was about oppression, slavery and the history. So I wrote an entire article on that, and I got 90, by the way, in that assignment. And I said, this is a great, this what has happened here is progress, because for the first time it will go into the archive for generations to see that the greatest crime ever committed against humanity was the transatlantic slavery. Very important. Stop fighting the reparation, how much the European will give us. That's secondary. Look at the primary first. Because as long as it was not declared as evil, it could be repeated without any remorse. Okay, but now it is in the archive. So the next step now is to say, America, if you committed a greater crime against humanity, what do you think you're supposed to do? That would be the next discussion.
And that's what they're scared of.
That's what they're scared of.
Yeah. Brother Sekou, Vince, you ready? You going for a break now, Brother Vince?
No, we're just going to continue the
show.
Continue?
Okay, today. Okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah, no problem. I knew we was going to try to get a break in there. But go ahead, my brother, if you got something else.
Yeah. So this is what we need to do, elevate the conversation. So instead of them sticking to the discussing the resolution, what does it mean for 8 billion people on earth to open their book and say the greatest crime committed against humanity since the earth was formed was the transportation, buying and selling of black people was the greatest crime? I think that's a good conversation. They left that and they were discussing crumbs. Oh, what are we going to get? Ghana will get reparation. Ghana wasn't discussing that they should get paid or not get paid.
Right.
They were saying, friend, accept that you committed this crime. And it wasn't just Ghana, the Caribbean countries were involved. So I'm saying our people are not even operating on the same frequency. They don't even understand our collective consciousness. And they were bringing things up like, oh, the African sold the African, so why will they get involved in discussing the... That's another discussion I can do a whole show about, because we have the primary documents of how the slavery started. Instead of you reading one European propaganda article, why don't you go to the primary document? Because we got primary document for Portuguese sailor Antao Goncalves saying that he went to the west coast of Africa and kidnapped a group of local people that were on their way to the farm. Kidnapped them. At the time, no slavery going on. He was only there to hunt. He was fishing. And then by the same time, they were trading in gold with Africa. Africans were just trading gold. Then they kidnapped these people. And then eventually they were like, hey, this could be a good idea. And when they started the slavery, African kings that we can show you from the Senegambia fought against them and said, we are not selling people. But they fought them and defeated them, replaced them with sellouts. Those sellouts started doing the business. This is what happened. It is today, it's like you overthrow an African leader, Pan-African leader, and replace him with a European puppet, and that European puppet starts selling the gold. Then you say the African people are responsible. I say, even logically, even if we agree that African kings, of course, some of them were involved into this. What about, take a picture of an African family who lived in a village in Ghana, and their son and their daughter went on the farm and was captured and sold into slavery. Do you think the parents are not victims? Because when you put all African in a box and say, African soldier, what about those African parents who lose their children and were victims? Because the first victims were the Africans on the continent, because our family members were taken without our consent. Some of us lost our father and our mothers, our cousins. The breadwinner of the family went to the farm and he never returned. So I am a victim as well, but now you accuse me to be a perpetrator. We were not all ruling as kings. Majority of the people were ordinary people. The elite were just 1%. The elite were not the majority of the people. The majority of the people were the victims. So this is how it worked. And the Europeans were the one who fueled this market. They were sponsoring it. The evidence is there that we can show the kings that rejected it, they were fought against. And we saw that. And the African did not have a race consciousness. That's why today we say, to fix that problem, we need to create a very strong race consciousness more than any other people. Go beyond your citizenship. Go beyond your ethnic group or your tribe. I even hate to be identified with that, except for marriage. In fact, the only time my ethnic group thing become important to me, maybe a marriage ceremony or some type of traditional rite I need to. But beyond that, my political and consciousness is Black African. My geopolitics has to be beneficial Black man first. My economics have to be, when I go out to buy something and there is a Black man who have a boutique around me, I will check there first. If he doesn't have it, before I can check, I will now check the Indian or the Chinese, but I will check the Black man's store first. If he treat me bad, I will tell him, you treated me bad and you need to fix the goddamn thing. I will criticize.
right.
I wouldn't say, oh, he treated me bad as a Black
I
guy.
ain't never going there no more.
I will attack him and say, brother, your store is there. In fact, I did that not long ago. I went to the Caribbean store. I told him, why not if you change the tires here, make this place clean, make it much better. He laughed. He said, brother, I said, yeah, we come here to buy, but your store is not clean, brother. Clean it. We pay money. You get a lot of money from us here. Put new tires here on the floor. Respect us. Clean this place. I don't want to come in here. There's fresh fish smelling everywhere. Make it nicer. And we laugh and part way. I would rather do that and go back there and buy than to say, oh, the African store is bad. I'm no longer going there. I'm going to the Chinese store. No, we should critique ourselves. That's what love is.
Brother Sekou, I want to go back to the significance of the UN vote.
Yes.
Because you stated that Ghana didn't say basically, you know, this happened and you should pay us. It was just an acknowledgement of the extent of the tragedy, the genocide that happened. But when we look at history and we look at the benefit that the enslavement process had on the United States, we can begin to understand why they would vote no. Because when you say yes, then there's an admission of culpability, and there should be some accountability that goes along with that. And that enslavement process was what enabled the United States to become the world leader that it has been for the past 250 years. So a debt is a debt. And here's the other thing. The IMF, the World Bank, they're all situated here in the United States. And the loans that have been made to African countries have been part of what has continued the enslavement and the colonialism. So at a certain point, you know, yeah, it was a courageous thing to say, you know, let's acknowledge that it happened. But I think even more importantly, the question should be asked, well, what do we do about it? When we look at those museums around the world that have our treasures in them that were taken, you know, those things belong where they came from and not under the custody of someone who kidnapped and snatched them, just like us. You know, when we talk about the mind games that have been played on us, where we would think of ourselves as not being Africans, even though we're all one family, you know, they successfully use divide and conquer to push us against each other so that we're fighting in each other and not united in our fight against our oppression and the attainment of our freedom. You know, they've played a serious game on us. And at some point, we have to stand up, just as our brother Ibrahim Traore stood up and said that we're not going to continue to be exploited by you, because we know that we have what you want and you can't have it unless you agree to our terms. I want to ask you a question about democracy, but we just have a few moments left in the broadcast on the radio side of things. But I just wanted to just to invoke that. Did you want to respond?
Yes. You see, the reparation, after acknowledgement, there has to be a discussion on reparation. And the best way to achieve it, and that's what I'm telling my brothers who are trying to delineate themselves or Black people who try to identify themselves into mostly their tribe rather than the collective good of Black people globally. If we operate as a group, we are likely to win. We are likely to achieve our objectives than when we are fragmented. And the issue of reparation, when you look at it, I look at the document. I said, okay, I took examples of African kingdoms that were actively involved. I took Dahomey, I took some of the Ashanti ethnic groups, and some individuals in Nigeria that were involved in the slavery. I said, what did they, in exchange, what did the European give them in exchange for those captives that they sold? And remember, slavery happened in two ways. They were kidnapping and capturing. That was the beginning of it. And then even it continued all through, but there was actually buying and selling. Now, the buying and selling, some of the African rogue leaders were given bread, umbrella, knives, alcohol, ridiculous things. Look it up. They were given textile that were coming from India, clothes to put on. They were having their own textile industry, but they were like, you know how elite behave. Oh, this look different. And then knives, the umbrella, foolish thing like that. And then alcohol, because the European chemical alcohol, when the natural one they were having, they tested the chemical one. Oh, this one, it make me drunk faster. Those were the things they were receiving. Then guns. Eventually, they were started getting guns. But for the European, what do they get in return? The entire European banking system was built on slavery. The insurance companies that you have today, ships were insured for millions of dollars when they lose cargo on the way, because the black man was the commodity, and the black woman. So sometimes when they know that they are insured, for them to get insurance, they drop people overboard. And to just tell the insurance company that they lost some goods on the way, and then the insurance paid them. The stock market that you are talking about today in Amsterdam was built on black slavery. So European generated billions of dollars. The plantation was producing, and the sugar, that's what they call the triangular movement. They bring the finished, the goods, the so-called manufactured goods to the African elites, get their slaves, then move them to the Caribbean, then the product, the work of the slaves, the sugar, the cotton and everything, they transported to Europe. So Europe was booming from free labor. In fact, you can say today the entire economy of the West was built on slavery. What did the African elite, the rogue elite, I would like to call them, they got umbrella, bread, and knife. Look it up. And wine. That's all they got. So I'm telling you, the reparation that needs to happen is that Europe, after this, in fact, when the UN 105 or 102 countries voted, I was expecting a massive protest in America, especially, for black people to say, why did our country, which is known to be built on slavery, reject this bill that was passed in the United Nations, the resolution? Why did you vote against it, Donald Trump? All the black MAGA, you were not angry against your president for voting against a crime committed against your ancestors. Just acknowledgement, because you know why? He's afraid that when they acknowledge it, now there will be legal action taken in America. Because once they acknowledge it, the civil rights movement can take a legal action and say, now you must pay. But you were supposed to force them to acknowledge it. They have to acknowledge it. And there has to be a reparation, returning of intellectual property, things that they stole on the continent in terms of artifacts. They are doing it now. They return some of them after the resolutions. Some of them I saw in Ivory Coast, in Congo, they were returning stuff. Even down, these people are so sick, they took the skull of our kings, killed them, cut off their head, and preserve it. They took royal family remains and keep them. They returned Lumumba tooth. The corpse remain of our ancestors. Some of them are keeping them in their basement.
Oh boy.
These are the people you are dealing with. So now I'm saying there has to be a reparation coming out of Europe. Yes. There has to be a spiritual, political, intellectual reconciliation. Because I think Pan-Africanism have done a good job, but there has to be still a good job in reconciliating the continent and its diaspora.
Okay.
A philosophical movement needs to be birthed to create that intellectual reconciliation.
Okay, we're going to step away for a few moments, just for a few moments before we begin our broadcast exclusively to YouTube and Facebook. So if you're listening to us on AM 1490 WERE, we invite you to join us on YouTube and Facebook. You can go to the 360 Info Network Facebook page. You can go to the Journey with Antonio on YouTube, and you can also go to my YouTube channel and join us there. Just want to acknowledge our brother in the studio who makes this broadcast possible, our brother Tone Harley. Thank you for doing what you do and bringing 360 Info Network to a worldwide audience. We'd also like to encourage you, when you go to YouTube, to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And then you will be able to get plugged in whenever we are doing lives. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make it a great day. Peace.
Peace, peace.
12 o'clock noon right here on YouTube and Facebook. We are with Sekou Kelleh. He is a Pan-African activist, I'll say. And he's doing great things in terms of bringing us knowledge and awareness about what's going on the continent. Brother Sekou, I want to ask you this question after listening to Joshua Mapongo. And he was making some comments about democracy in African nations. And if we look at the model that has been created by Ibrahim Traore, we can see that there's been a bit of a pushback on that whole concept. And when you look at the history of Africa, it hasn't always been about democracy. It seems as though democracy is something that the Europeans brought to us and then try to keep us to holding it as a standard as how we should govern ourselves. But the problem with democracy is that it's not being practiced as it is theorized. So I'm just wondering, based on your knowledge of how countries have operated over the years, is democracy something that can serve us well in these countries, that we need to have a certain level of sovereignty, autonomy, and control of our resources, our natural resources and our people? What are your thoughts about that?
Now, I watched some of Joshua Maponga's video. I think he visited Burkina Faso recently to see some of the reform that's taking place in Burkina Faso, and then the question of democracy came up. Now, here is my take. I believe that democracy is important. Okay, important in the sense that the dividends of it, the freedom of speech, freedom to criticize government, freedom to
religion,
and then especially freedom of speech, exactly, and then the freedom to associate and all of that. They are very, very important in any society, and I think democracy is important in that sense. However, I think democracy has been overhyped as the vehicle to development progress. It is not the vehicle to development progress. It is a byproduct, because you got to distinguish it. It is the byproduct that you are supposed to get, I think, if you attain certain level of development. But it is not the foundation itself that can lead you to that progress and development that you want. Because let me tell you, the fake democracy that we have right now in Africa, it appears to be a democracy, but in reality, it is it's a picture painted by the West to be able to have control. So what happened in democracy is that institutions are independent or interdependent, and then there are oppositions, and then there is the leader. So what the Europeans have done is that they created a fake democracy in Africa that weakens the state, where they can be able to finance opposition to destabilize the country. Since opposition is allowed, so they weaponize the opposition, since they know that African states do not have a very strong security and intelligence network yet to be able to know whether opposition is trying to form rebellion against the state or not. No country accepts rebellion. But it's like all opposition in Africa are likely to turn into a rebellion and armed by external forces. So where do we go? Because if all the oppositions are turning into rebellion, and then sometimes the government in power, also when they are doing the bidding of the West, then they become internal dictators. And nobody talk about them. They can rule for 50 years or 40 years like Paul Biya of Cameroon without doing anything. As long as he's doing the work of France, it's okay. But if you are doing good work, like John Pombe Magufuli of Tanzania, then we can call you dictator and get rid of you and kill you. So there's a game going on. So what Ibrahim Traore have proposed is that Africa should go into a revolution mode. We should go in revolution mode. In revolution mode means that we will suspend democracy a little bit to be able to build strong institutions first, free of external influence or interference, build strong economy, build strong institution, build strong, a good infrastructure, build, nationalize our wealth, economy. Until we have autonomy and power, then we can open up to the rest of the world. Because it's like they are asking us to partake in a competition when they are thousands of miles ahead. Let's start the competition. It's like this thing you hear about capitalism. They said, it's a competition and it's about maximization of profit. Well, in order for me to participate in capitalism, I need to have capital. But for 500 years, you accumulated primitive capital. People work for you for 500 years, you didn't pay them. You accumulated that wealth. And I come out of colonialism and slavery, and you said, let's compete.
Yeah.
How are we competing?
You're still in the locker room.
Okay, it's like a billionaire. You work for a billionaire, and then he pay you peanuts. Then at the end of the day, he'll come out and he say, "Now I want you and I to compete in the job market." Well, what's going to happen is that he's going to buy all the assets, and I will end up as a slave for him. So that's what they are doing. The democracy and open market system in Africa allow European investors to come because they have the capital. They buy our ports. They buy our electricity companies. They buy the sewage water system. They buy every important, the gold mining sector. They buy everything. Then the ordinary African who have no capital to compete, begin to work for them. So that all the tall buildings and hotels you see in Dakar belong to the white guy, and the cleaners are the citizens of the country because they don't have the capital to compete with that white investor guy that come into the country. So what Ibrahim Traore is proposing, why don't we build our own billionaires? Why don't we build our own infrastructure and then prepare our people to be able to compete? Because as it stands right now, we are like 100 years behind, and they want us to compete. In reality, they don't want us to catch up. But now, this is the issue when people think of democracy, mostly is the government. Oh, we got to vote for the leader and then for the leader to come in. Well, Chinese have shown to us that democracy is not the foundation of development.
That's where I was going to go.
China being the second most powerful economy or market in the world, people don't queue up every day to vote for Xi Jinping. What they have is that they've developed an ideology and a philosophy that they put in place that will uplift China from a poor third world country to a global superpower. That's the plan. Once they are there, then now maybe Chinese intellectuals in the future, in 100 years, can say, hey, can we, free up this other area and have more democracy in this area? They did it, for example. They started as communists. Eventually, they opened up the market. Initially, the Chinese market was closed. There was no free market in China. But eventually, China opened up a little bit. They allowed American investors to come in. But initially, that was not what they did. China closed itself until they developed. Then they were able to open up to the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
This is what Ibrahim is saying. When Ibrahim Traore took over, the gold mining sector was owned by the Canadians and the other people. Nothing was owned by Burkina Faso and Burkina Faso people. Nothing. And they were just exploiting and taking everything out of the country. He said, stop. With the nation need to nationalize some of the wealth. We need to build our institutions and be able to compete with the rest of the world. I support that idea. As long as it is not a dictatorship that is for a strong man, for us to be worshiping and praising one guy. Yeah. But if it is for the collective interest of the people, and the revolution can continue even after the leader dies, I'm for that. A system-based revolution, not a one-man-based revolution. Chinese have a system-based revolution. You kill the president of China today, the revolution continues. You kill the Ayatollah of Iran, the revolution continues. That's what I want. I don't want you to kill a Thomas Sankara, then the end of the revolution. Or you kill Ibrahim Traore tomorrow, the revolution ends. That's my only critique of them. It should be a system-based revolution so that there's a continuity of the development agenda of the people, no matter who is killed, no matter who is removed from power. That's my position. Yeah. And one of the reforms that he did, if I can share my screen a little bit, where you see Ibrahim Traore in the picture. No, the second one. Yes. Yeah. So recently, he passed a law in the country on religion. He said there will be freedom of religion, but religion will be regulated by the state. And what does that mean? He said no worship area in any public building. That's the first time in Black Africa. For such, if you go to in African countries, they said the religion is separated from the state, but every public building is a mosque or church. The presidential palace, the parliament, everywhere, religious building, every gathering started by Muslim prayer or Christian prayer, as if we live in a theocracy. So Ibrahim Traore said, this is a secular state, no building a religious edifice in any public area. The state has no religion. And no praying on the street. The Muslim can block the highway on Friday because they are praying to Allah. If the Christian do it and the African traditionalists do it, then we don't have a country. We can be blocking public area. And the Muslim became angry for that. And they started protesting. He arrested the imam who were criticizing. This is how the revolution looked like. It will be very difficult in a democracy to implement that. Because the African will go and protest and say, we got to pray everywhere. Our mosques have to be every place. There has to be some regulation. Because some of the religious extremism that we have, it comes from the belief that people think the religion is untouchable in African countries. They can do whatever they want. So Burkina Faso is setting up an African country free of religious interference, control its own economy, militarily powerful. He's investing in AI technology. Eventually, the country becomes self-reliant and powerful. Then you can discuss democracy or you want to be voting for a leader. That's okay. But let's have a country first. We don't even have a country, and you guys are discussing democracy.
Absolutely. You know what, Brother Sekou? I was just thinking as you were explaining this, it seems as though as a result of this fake democracy that's in play, you lose power that the people could have because their interests are neutralized by the lobbyists who pay the politicians to get what they want. So if you take this fake democracy and you push it to the side, then you can return the power to the people and take it out of the hands of the people who have money that influence policy.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
but see what you're saying too, Sekou. That's you probably can find that type of uh, thing all the way through history because you have to recapture. Black folks in this country got to do the same thing. Put away all that extra internal pettiness differences that we talk about and deal with what we're dealing with on the collective. Expel all the other mess that is impeding on your whatever task that you're trying to do, and then you can maybe open up. That's what everybody had to do. You had to kick all the foreigners. See, in America, it'd be certain different. We have to expel all of them from our communities and our businesses and stuff, and not support them and replace them with other black-owned businesses and stuff like that. So in other countries, they got to get rid of all of that extra stuff and drill down on them, what's important to them and their culture. And that's what Joshua Bapunga was talking about. And I see some of that coming back, and that's what he's preaching. What were you before you was a Christian? What were you before you was practicing Islam? What traditions and stuff were doing before all that took place? So if you still running your country with colonial laws and constitutions, how you gonna ever find yourself? You got some of these African countries still wearing the little white wigs in the courtrooms that they got from Europe. So how could you ever, having a self-identity or identify yourself, and give your country the self-pride and and things of that nature if you still run it on somebody else's philosophy on how to do things?
Exactly. It is like an adage in my area that says that if you're on a journey and you get lost, say you're going to a particular town or city and you are like, whoa, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going. I can't find the route. The first thing, the solution is look back. Are you able to trace your step back? Can you find yourself back? Instead of continuing in confusion, at least retreat. Find yourself. If you can get back to your original point, then you can replan this journey and resketch it. But if you say, well, I don't want to go back, I've gone too far, well, you can continue in being lost. You can be lost forever. So trace your step backward. So what the revolution has done is to say, let's redefine ourselves first. Hold on a minute.
Yes.
Because it's like we were going at the speed of light, but our destination, we don't even know where we're going. So slow down, hold the brake. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are running on certain speed and you know it's dangerous, there's nothing wrong with slowing down and say, hold on a minute. Are my tires even working? Do I have enough gas? Is this car even okay to continue? Am I going to crash? If you don't ask the rational question, we can already determine what's going to happen to you. We can predict your end because you are moving at the speed without even checking the vehicle you are in, whether it's fine. So this is what the revolution is. It's an ideological position and a rational position. Let's go inward, dear people, redefine ourselves, regulate the religion, eliminate this unnecessary tribal sentiment, control our economy, define our global position in geopolitics. Then now we can confront the rest of the world. This is what we are doing. And people, they hate that because they want to take your goal. They want you to open up and have all these puppet presidents. We've been having elections since 1960s in many African countries. What are they produced? The elections are rigged. Obama rigged the election in Nigeria to bring in a guy. And then that guy ruined Nigeria today. Okay? Because I would say he rigged the election because he made a video in the middle of the election and said, vote for this guy. And he ruined the election. And since then, Nigeria has never known peace. So those type of interference, it's very easy to do that in these fragile countries because the institutions are not that powerful. So you can easily give one guy, opposition guy, some money, he can ruin the country. So let's close the country and put our best mind to work. And this is what we were supposed to do at the beginning in Africa. After independence, Africa was supposed to close its border. after independence, and not talk of development, talk of renaissance. That's what Cheikh Anta Diop proposed. There is nothing like development. Development is a fake terminology. It means then there is a point of non-development and you are moving towards development. It's like moving from a state of primitiveness to a point of civilization. This is what they sold to us. But in reality, anything in nature naturally develops. You put a plant, it will grow. You plant everything, nature made everything to naturally develop. When you see that thing not developing, something is impeding the development. It could be the environment, external factors. It could be somebody, the seed was planted on the wrong soil. That's why it's not growing. It's not getting enough water. It's not getting enough sunlight, but naturally it was meant to grow. So if you really want to grow, what you do is renaissance. You rebirth. You go back and establish your root and get all those nutrients you need to get. And boom, you see yourself moving forward. That's what renaissance is. The rediscovery. Okay, the rediscovery and expression of African creativity and genius. That's what we need to do. We don't need Chinese experts to fix our roads. We don't need European experts. It's time that we put our own expertise into play. It is time that we compete with them in the area of technology and science. And we need that self-confidence because the African leaders have no self-confidence. And most African leaders today, the so-called democratic leader, they all die in European hospitals. All of them. But Ibrahim Traore will never take a plane to go get treated in a European country. That's the difference. He would rather build the best hospital in Burkina Faso and die in Burkina Faso. But your democratic leader, the current president of Nigeria, every 2 weeks he go for a medical checkup in France. And he's a democratic leader. The democratic leader of Ivory Coast, his hospitals and his doctor live in Paris. He goes every week for checkup. That's the highest form of betrayal. So when these people talk of democracy, all they really mean is, how can you have traitors as your leaders in Africa that we can control? So when they say revolutionary leaders are leaders that we want, that can put our society together. The free speech part of democracy, the freedom of association, I think we should have a vehicle first, a country first, with our own economy and dignity, then we can talk about that.
Yes. Brother Sekou, we have just about 7 minutes, and you have another visual that you want to share, and I want to ask you about the conflict in Iran and its impact on Africa. So let's check this out and then move forward with the idea about Iran and Africa.
Yes. So this book is still in French. For some reason, I haven't seen the English translation yet. It was written by a Senegalese named Tidjane Ndiaye. I think he died last year. And the title in French is Le Génocide dévoilé, which in English translation is The Veiled Genocide. So this man did a very good research and said, hey, there's a lot of discussion on the transatlantic slavery, which is very important, but 17 million Black people were taken to the Arabian subcontinent. What happened to them? 17 million human beings were shipped. I think the transatlantic slavery is 10 million. 17 million were taken by the Arabs to the Muslim world. What happened to those Black people? He said it's a genocide that has been veiled. The Arabs, Muslims, committed genocide against the Black race, and they've never apologized. And it's time we bring that to the center of discussion.
Come on.
Because the Black Muslims always avoid discussing the Arabs.
Yes.
They are with us when we talk of Europeans. The Black Muslims are with us. They are with us when we discuss European colonialism. But once we touch their spiritual brothers, they are uncomfortable. If you are uncomfortable to discuss the evil committed against your people, you are not ready for revolution. You're not ready. I'm not fighting side by side with any Black African soldier who says you can't talk about certain people. That's not a soldier that can have your back on the battlefield. I can fight with a black Muslim revolutionary who say when it comes to Islam and Arab, don't say a word. That's a traitor. You can't fight with him side by side on the battlefield. He will kill you for the Arabs. That's the reality that we must confront. So the Arab genocide is something, and I'm happy that it was a Senegalese Muslim who wrote this, because if someone else had written it, they would say, oh, he's biased because he's Christian or he's from this country. And thank God, Senegalese always produce fine intellectuals. And Ndiaye wrote this book, and I encourage people to look for this book and
Hey, Sekou, I think you need to put a footnote here as well, and letting the audience know that you come from a Muslim background yourself, so you know what you're talking about. Yeah. You see it firsthand.
Yeah. You see, my father's name is Abdul Malik. In fact, my middle name until today is Sekou Malik Kelleh. I couldn't get rid of it. It's there. So I was born in a Muslim family. Our people have been Muslim for 500 years or more than that. Okay.
Well, speaking of Islam, Iran is an Islamist country, is it not?
It is.
And right now, they basically have the world by the cojones because they're controlling the flow of goods through the Straits of Hormuz. This is against the backdrop of Brother Dangote in Nigeria, who has decided that not only will they get the crude, but they will refine it and then they will market it and sell it. So I'm just wondering, what is the impact of this conflict or war, whatever you want to call it? What impact is it having on Africa? And what can Africa do to perhaps strategically advantage themselves in that situation so that you can bring prosperity to African countries?
Yes. So unfortunately, I will say this. Recently, Teofilo Benga, one of our great intellectuals, he's very old now. He had an interview and he said something that hurt a lot of people. And even me, when I saw the video, I was hurt. Then I said, maybe the man is getting old and they should stop interviewing him. He said, and when I analyzed it, he's right. He said, in as much as we wouldn't like to say, Africa does not exist on the grand scheme of things in the world today. We have failed yet to put ourselves at the center of global discussion in terms of power, in terms of economics. If you take a class today in economics in any prestigious university in the world, they're going to discuss European economy, they will discuss China, they will discuss Japan, they will hardly mention Africa. You will never hear it. There is no African spec. There is no value to say, this is a Japanese spec, this is the European spec, this is the African spec. The Africans, despite the enormous potential, we have refused to register our existence in the global scheme of things. And what Iran is doing, bring it back to Iran, Iran have understood that what we call economy is actually warfare. And for your enemies to respect you, you have to show that you are able to incur damage on your enemy. That's the only time they respect you. The European, the white Caucasian man, he only respects power. When he sees that you have the capacity to kill him, that's when he can discuss with you.
North Korea.
You can call him whatever you want to call it, and it is not because it is people want to say genetic, that white people are bad. No, it's not about a genetic issue that the white man is bad. This is the way the culture, the progress, their so-called progress in history was built on that. The history of European Renaissance and conquering of the world, their wealth was based on stealing, kidnapping, taking people land, taking people resources, even human beings. So this is the trajectory of their economic progress. So they can't change that now. It's not happening. So every now and then they try to do it. When their economy is going down, they were going to bring out that beast to try it on everybody. So it is left with you if you are prepared yourself enough psychologically, economically, politically, that whenever they release that beast, you have a beast to release to contain their beast at the gate. What Iran has done, Iran said, okay, we can fight America, the great United States, with nuclear power, but we got something, which is the Strait of Hormuz is where the oil path to supply the global market. We also can create technology not to defeat them, but to overwhelm whatever they have. It's a strategy, okay? Asymmetric warfare. And they did it successfully. America right now is like that huge giant beast standing up, but it's chained in the feet and his leg is not able to move. Not because it doesn't have a strength, but it's not even understanding where it's been attacked from. So Iran, I'm not a supporter of any theocracy. I don't want any country to be governed by a religious law, but these people have registered their existence on the planet because they say you can't mess with us. We will fight with everything we have. And economic is warfare, and we're going to use it to fight. Africans fail to do that. And even right now, as the Strait of Hormuz is closed, there is a global petroleum crisis, and the price is hiking, even in Africa. But Africa have oil. We were supposed to turn the table. That whenever Europe is having problem with the Middle East, we start to supply the world. That was supposed to be our strategy. Because we got enough gas and oil to supply the world and take over the global market. Before those Gulf countries can free themselves from their fight, we are the major supplier. That's the idea. Individual business people are getting it, but the leadership is not getting it. That's where Dangote comes in, the Nigerian billionaire, the richest man in Africa. He built the biggest refinery in the world. Biggest, to refine crude, make fertilizers. And he's able, if things go well, to supply most of West Africa and Africa and be able to make us self-reliant and even supply the world. But they are trying to strangle that factory as I speak to you.
Yes.
In fact, they are telling Nigerian government not to sell crude oil to him. Can you imagine that? His own country, they are trying to stop him. They are starting to stop the government from giving him crude oil to refine. Something that we were supposed to rally around him, made that factory very powerful. So we don't have any crisis. Whatever they are having going on, Africa will have abundance of crude oil, and we can even supply the global market. So I think it is time for Africans leaders to understand that everything is warfare. Politics, global politics is warfare. Economic is warfare. And there is nothing like cooperation or aid or European want us to develop partnership. I saw the last time they have a meeting in Kenya. The French president called a conference in Kenya. He said, Africa forward. Who the hell is he to talk about Africa moving forward? Like, I don't really get it. I'm like, why would a French president be worried about Africa moving forward? This is some type of big brother game going on. He's telling you Africa should go backward. That's really what he's telling you.
It's always the opposite of what they say.
It's the opposite. Yeah. Why is my competitor? It's like, imagine I'm having a football match and the opposite team I'm playing against tomorrow comes to my house to discuss how I can move forward.
Yeah. How they can win.
Yeah.
How the other team can win.
I will be worried if my opponent comes to my house to tell me how I should win. I know that they've come to poison me, they've come to slow me down, or they've come to learn my strategy to make sure they fail me. This is common sense. But African leaders were drinking champagne and laughing, and they said they are discussing African forward. I'm like, if I be a revolutionary leader like my brother in Burkina Faso, I think I would be very, very bad. Because there are certain people that just need not to be discussing African politics.
All this is mental. I mean, and
the French president go to Japan to say, hey, Japan forward. All Japanese youth, we have a meeting. I want to discuss Japan forward. They will kick him out. Or China. They said China's forward. Chinese people will be like, are you crazy? We can tell you what we are. You can tell China forward. This is the tragedy.
I don't know if it's all mental or what. I just, it has to be mental, and I try to discuss a little bit that in the book. It has to be mental because it don't with us. If you got all this history about being and dealing with this European, all the history, all the facts, like my good brother Dr. Wesley Muhammad said, show me a time when you came, that whites came in contact with non-whites and non-whites benefited from that relationship. So that ain't happened. We're always on the tail end of everything all the time. So you got the history. And in my analogy to that, and I'm saying it to all my African Americans and African American listeners out there because it baffles me. You got the history. If you was involved with a crackhead and the crackhead came with this phone and said, "Hey, I got this phone for you," and this, that, and that, by you knowing his history, you're looking at him with a cross eye, like, okay, where did you get that phone from? Who did you take that phone from? This man have shown you 400 plus years that he'll have your best interest at heart at all. All the stuff that is still coming out about the things that they have, the atrocities that they have done against us here.
And to be fair to them, I don't think it is in their place to even think good of us. This is the law of the jungle. Everybody's trying to outrun each other. They try to win. We're trying to win. The mistake we are making is trusting them to advise us how to win.
That's
why do we need that advice? And I love what Miss Brenda said in the comment section. He had the audacity to call himself a real Pan-African. A French president in Kenya, he said he's the real Pan-African. What an insult to Kwame Nkrumah. What an insult to Sekou Touré. What an insult to Captain Thomas Sankara. People that you guys killed or are trying to destroy their government. Now you turn around and say you are a real Pan-Africanist and African leaders. And that brings us to this sellout behavior of what is happening in Senegal. You all were here when I talked about the election of the Senegal president, and how the outgoing government at the time refused to allow the Pan-African Party leader to be a candidate, Ousmane Sonko. So while Ousmane Sonko was in prison, he chose his secretary to run in his state. And the secretary won the election. But get what they did? They invited him to Paris. He went to a few meetings. When he came back, he abandoned the project of the party. A young man in my age group. When I looked at it, I'm like, this resistance fatigue. I'm afraid that the black race should not go into a resistance fatigue mood where we fight until we are even tired of fighting anymore. Because for this guy to be elected, more than 10 to 20 young people died on the street and said that we must have a Pan-African party in power. And they promised the people three important things. One is that they're going to have a divorce or economic separation from France and build an autonomous economic system. They promised that they're going to move away from the CFA, the French control currency in West Africa, and create their own currency. They promised that they were going to align with the AES countries to be able to boost their security. And they were going to focus on agriculture and boost the economy and create employment for young people. He got in power and he betrayed all those agendas. In fact, he called the European leader to come and protect his border against the AES countries.
Is that right?
Yeah, Jomai Faye. Then there's what they call structural adjustment in the World Bank economic policy. What they do is they give you huge loan interest on it for African country, and then they indebt you to a point that you are not able to pay. Then they come to you, they say, okay, there is a policy called structural adjustment. We will help you to fix the debt, but you will implement a policy called structural adjustment. You stop financing your your education system. The money you put in your education system, slice it into half. Stop financing your education system. The money you put in your health, slice it into half. Don't put a lot of money in health. And then gave us that money and then reduce the money you put in subsidizing the poor people, subsidizing the energy, subsidizing housing for the poor people. Stop all of that. And we will put all that money together and see how we can service your debt. Structural adjustment. That's what, and then devaluate your economy, your currency.
Mm-hmm.
This policy is what killed Nigerian economy. This policy is what impoverished Ivory Coast and destroyed their economic miracle in 1980. Now they came back to Senegal because Senegal is doing all the right thing and they are progressing. They just discovered a large gas and oil deposit and they are about to, move into the future. Now they say Senegal should implement the structural adjustment. Now, why are you targeting money that goes to the education and health, which are the two hallmarks of development?
Mm-hmm.
Because education, if you don't have an educated society and healthy society, you don't have a country. This is where World Bank wants you to remove the money from. So they love poor and uneducated African society. Mm-hmm. It helps their agenda. And this guy decided that he will implement the structural adjustment. His prime minister, who was supposed to be the original candidate and president, said, we can't do this. This is not what we promised the people. He fired him. He fired the prime minister, Ousmane Sonko. And what Ousmane Sonko did, he went to the parliament and his guys in the parliament voted him to be the president, the president of the parliament. So now he is like the Senate president. He's going to counter the president of the republic. So they are having an institutional battle in Senegal right now. So the level of betrayal of our leader is alarming. They say something, and then when they get in power and go to Paris and drink wine, they change their mind. They change their mind. This is the betrayal that I think when we start to attack that betrayal, any leader who does that, we attack you and remove you from power. That's how we're going to get it right.
They put his brain in the washing machine and ran it through for a few cycles and then put some money in his hand and sent him back to Senegal.
Yeah. He changed his mind. Why are you changing your mind? Why so-called structural adjustment? Ivory Coast was considered, if you Google the economic miracle of Ivory Coast in the 1980s, because they were the world #1 producer of cocoa and coffee. And the economy started booming. The only mistake they made, they were supposed to industrialize. Why the economy was booming, they were the world #1 producer of cocoa. You were supposed to start building factory that every chocolate in the market was supposed to be coming from that country. People were supposed to say, give me an Ivory Coast chocolate, give me an Ivory Coast tea. That's what you're supposed to hear about. No, we have French chocolate, we have American chocolate, and they don't have the natural product. It's coming from Ivory Coast. So Ivory Coast economy at some point started to suffer. The World Bank came in and said, hey, you have to implement structural adjustment. Stop financing education, stop financing health, devaluate your currency, and this is what you need to do. And in fact, we will give you a prime minister who used to work in the World Bank to work. He will be your prime minister. That's how they brought Alassane Ouattara, the current president, to be the prime minister of the then president of Ivory Coast, Houphouët-Boigny. And this guy did a structural adjustment, and that was the end of the Ivorian economic miracle. They never made it until today. And that so-called prime minister who destroyed our economy is currently the president of that country. And he was a sellout. He worked for World Bank all his life. And now what he did, he borrowed and borrowed until the country is in debt. For 100 years, they might not be able to pay those debts. And there are all the tall buildings and flashy roads that he made and painted. And people think that's development. That's not development because you don't own those things. They were owned by French entrepreneurs. They are owned by French multinational companies. That they can destroy those things in 1 minute. They can destroy your economy in a second. If any president refuses to do their bidding, that's not development. You are not self-reliant. You don't produce billionaires in your own country who are investing, who can keep the money circulating in the country. All the billionaires that bring money into Africa are not Africans. And that's not good. That's why people are Dangote and other. We need to produce our own billionaires, and then they will invest in the country. That's how the money stays. But this is the issue with
the talent too. The talent stays as well.
Yeah.
The talent don't have to go, go and go to other places. To keep it right there in self-development, the educational piece that you say, Sekou, is very important. Any advancements in that area, you think, as far as Africa is concerned? Because there's an awakening, in spite of all what we're saying, there's an awakening with the young folks going through Africa, coming up, because there's always been young people who was made the. I think they're putting a lot of pressure on a lot of these old heads, presidents, right at this point. And I don't know what's going to happen at that point, but they're going to push him out the office one way or another if this thing don't change, because Abraham, he's a vehicle and a vessel for that movement.
Yeah, I think the hallmark, any measurement of development, I think based on the United Nations Development Goal, health and education come first. How you tell if a country is making progress or not, check the statistics of the education level of the people, and check the health system. If the people are healthy and they are educated, you are likely to produce a very good society. You are likely, because educated people will start voting right. They will start asking questions. They will start creating jobs. No educated person wants to live in a slum. They would like to say, my environment needs to be clean. I need to build. Educated people want to live in a good place. They don't ask for less. They ask for the best. So if you want to fix the country, educated and healthy people. Fix that, you start seeing the country moving in the right direction.
I see. Good point.
You look at Japan, they have the highest number of literate societies. See how it is? Nobody tells Japanese pick up trash. People know they need to pick up trash. Okay, so produce educated society and healthy society. But the World Bank, IMF, always target these two areas in Africa. They are like, defund education, defund health. Why? So that your vaccine can come from Europe, so that Bill Gates can come with his little syringe, so that they can do whatever they want to do to you. But that's what Senegal has been trying all these years. Senegal, to their credit, they've been investing in education. But now the World Bank is trying to target that. And that's why the Pan-African Party that is in power, although their president is betraying them, they are like, we will resist it in the parliament. There has to be a lot of investment in education. And the Sahel country, they are also coming to that realization, especially Traore. He is understanding that. He's investing a lot in education. He's investing a lot in technology and all of that. That's the way to go. All these fancy roads, for me, I don't go to an African, people judge African countries differently. For me, it's different. They go like, oh, how many bridges and streets are here, whether the roads look good, like Paris. All those are secondary. They are secondary. The primary development is the people. The people you are interacting with on the street has their level of education. What is the health system? If any society fix that and have a very measurable way of taking people out of poverty, that country is on the right trajectory. Have a very tangible and measurable way of taking people out of poverty, which is you are investing in critical areas. You are giving you are investing in SME, the little businesses in the country. There's loan available to help them to invest, not investors from abroad, but within the country. Is the government providing a line for the people to have businesses in their own country? Is the government investing in industrialization, building refineries, building like they do doing in Burkina Faso? They're refining their own gold. Ibrahim Traore came and said, no more exporting of tomatoes. and no more importing. We have to build a factory. We are producing tomatoes. Why do we have to buy paste tomato from France or tomato paste? Why? Why do we get a peanut butter that have to come from Holland? We can just do it here. We can get a machine from every country at least once in a generation. The next generation, we should produce that machine. This is the mindset we should have. If from just consumption, but production. We've got to be on the trajectory of production, not just consumption. That's the way you move forward. Critical education, health, moving people out of poverty and industrialize. It's not complicated. It's not confusing. But the problem is Europeans, lenders, the banks, the IMF, they make sure that those areas are paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
They make sure that education, your textbooks, they make sure that they are the one funding it. They are like, there's no money. Nigeria, I think their entire budget, what they invested in their education, the budget, I think it's about $1 million or $2 million. I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but you can check it up. Maybe 200 million people. The money they pay for people to go to Saudi Arabia to Hajj is more than the money they put in the educational sector. The money that they used for foolish things, even traveling of the president to go meet with world leader, is more than the money they budgeted for education. You can tell that society is preparing to fail. You got to invest in education. You got to invest in health. And you got to take people out of poverty. Any government that knows how to do that, that country is going to get better in 10 years.
Yes. Brother Sekou, I know that you said that your time was limited today. So there was a question posed. I don't know if we have enough time to answer it. If we do, we can do that. If not, we'll just have to give you the grace to do what you have to do today, because I know you said you had to take a test. Ms. Brenda is asking, do you have time to comment on how the U.S. is trying to extort minerals forever from Africa in exchange for HIV vaccines?
I am not familiar with this news.
Okay.
What I heard, that Donald Trump have a project on a health project where he's moving around, he's asking African country to sign up to that health project. I don't know the details, but I think many countries rejected it because it is supposed to give America access to African health database, which is very dangerous. It's even a national security issue. The DNA, the data material of your country. You don't give it out to anybody. So this is a biological weapon. And
basically, too, especially when you're dealing with a person that got like I just said, with a bad history. You got
that have a history of killing your people en masse. Why is that? I'm saying that no animals I know in the forest will do that. You can call a wild boar or antelope and say, "Can you allow a lion to secure your sleeping area?" They would never agree. They would be like, "I will be eating. I will not do it."
Crazy.
Your natural survival instinct should tell you that no Western country should have access to a health database, no matter what happened. Even in a nuclear war with a bullet on your head, don't do it.
Yeah, and you know he got an agenda. He's looking about 10 years down the line. We got something for your genetic makeup, for your ethnic makeup. We're gonna do this. We can do this for you. You know he got an agenda. You know it ain't out of love. Okay, he done showed you for 500 years he ain't doing nothing out of love for you. You know, just like I'm gonna say it, the jab that he was doing. You know, it ain't out of love.
Yeah, it was from my perspective, it was something that was done to affect fertility, you know, because it supports the whole depopulation agenda. If you look at what happened in Kenya, you know, I don't have to remind folks who are apprised of that that's exactly what the modus operandi was. So I want to respond to Miss Brenda's comment, because I heard the same thing, you know, and it's in alignment with what you said about health, and education. And the same game plan really is running here in the United States. That's why you got kids on the street or children on the street that don't know a nickel from a dime.
Yeah.
They're not getting that information through their education process.
No.
You could ask those children, what's the capital of Kansas? They probably couldn't tell you, because the education system has been affected in such a way that it's not developing analytical, critical thinkers.
Yes.
We just take in information. Brother Tim Goller posted something on Facebook earlier this week, and basically his statement was that distraction is the new slavery. I think we really need to examine that, because it is absolutely true. You cannot separate people from these things. If you look around, you go to a restaurant, people will be sitting at the table at the restaurant looking at their phone. You could have a dinner
with other people sitting around there.
Yeah, you could have a dinner. You're at home, in your own home, and people are sitting at the table, if they sit at a table, with looking at their phone. You go out in public and everybody is just glued. It is definitely the new slavery. I just want to thank you for sharing so much profound insight with us, brother. These are the things that we are not plugged into that we need to be plugged into, because we're a global people. We're one people, and they have successfully divided and conquered in certain ways. But how do we push back on that? We have to separate ourselves from the control that they have over our minds. And sometimes that means turning this thing off and having a conversation with somebody who knows what they're talking about. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us today. Anything you want to say in conclusion, Brother Antonio?
I'll maybe next week talk about my book signing and a fundraiser that we're doing in July. So I'll speak on it on the top of the show next week.
Okay. And if you haven't done so yet, you can go to Amazon.com and you can get your copy of Conscious Policing, To Be or Not to Be, a conscientious self-reflection guide for Blacks in law enforcement. If you know Antonio, you will know him through this book. If you don't know Antonio, you will know him through this book. Trust and believe on that. Brother Sekou, anything in conclusion that you want to share with us?
Yeah, Justus, thank you once again. And I love the title of the book, very inspiring. I was, if I thought of it earlier, I would have shared another flyer, which is it kind of like relate to the book of my experience. I will use that as the closing in Europe. So I work there as a cultural mediator. So as a cultural mediator, I learned the language, Italian, and then I started working in a hospital to translate for doctors or interpreter. So the Red Cross was my employer, and they took me to this big clinic where refugees were coming from North Africa, from West Africa, from Syria, and that's where they will, when they are brought from the boats, they go there for first aid treatment and all of that. So I was helping interpreting. Then they have the refugee camp right there. So every Monday, Thursday, we have visitation. People come to speak to the doctor, mothers with their kids. So there was something happening there they were asking me to comply with, which was that the Arab women, the Arab and the Syrian mothers with their babies, were given a separate door to pass and see the doctor quickly and easily and comfortably. And the African mothers, the Nigerians and other, they were under the rain and the snow with their babies. They were crying and they were waiting. So it was done in such a way that you can't even tell it's happening. So I stand at the reception. So when the Arab women come, all I needed them to do is to say, go to that room there. So once they go there, the Nigerian women will be thinking that it's a sitting area, but there's a door in there that goes straight to see the doctor. And then outside, the Nigerian women, they will be there for hours. So I did that for a month, and I went home. I couldn't sleep. I've not even become conscious as I am now, but already the black consciousness was there. I'm like, why? All night I kept asking myself, why do the black women queue up? And then one day I just tried my employer, my boss, Carmelo. I said, Carmelo, why don't all of them wait under the rain or wherever where everybody sit? And then as I write their name, they come in first come, first serve basis. He said, yeah, that's the rule. But you know, those are black women, they are yelling, they are shouting, they behave like animale. You know, which in Italian means they are behaving like animals. He's saying that the black women are yelling, they are not orderly, they are not following the rule. The Arab women are peaceful and quiet, so that's why they did it that way. So I'm like, why did he even have a confidence to call black women animals in my presence, and he doesn't even feel that he did anything wrong? But then he added, he said, but you know, Sekou, you are different. To say he said, you are civilized. You are a good guy. You are clean. You are civilized. You are not like them. And I'm like, that's another insult. How are you telling me I'm better than my people? In contrast to what? What is that compliment about? So I one day I'm like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. So I wanted to work. I wrote it on Facebook, by the way, and I generated an AI picture for it. So I opened the door wide, the secret room where the Arab women are. I went and told those Nigerian women, I'm like, there is a door over there. Everybody should just troop in. So they went in with force, and then it became chaotic. They were fine. So the Carmelo came and said, who showed them this door? I'm like, I don't know. They discover it, and I let it open, and everybody go through it. So the only solution right now, boss, they all have to wait on the queue. Otherwise, this door have been discovered and they'll all go through this door. I can't control it. So we have to make a choice. They all go through this back door or everybody wait for their turn. He said, okay, I choose everybody wait for their turn. I'm like, brilliant. So from that day forward, I write people's name and they go according to their turn. Then he told me, he said, but in reality, don't you see that those black women were not orderly, they were yelling? I said, yeah, that's true. I said, that's because they feel that they are not treated properly. When you treat people, you don't treat them well, they are likely to behave a certain way. And there's something called confirmation bias, which I now realize I'm doing my psychology course. When you have a bias against a people, you only pick things to confirm your bias. You already believe that they are yelling. So whatever they do, even when they are doing something to fight for their right, you consider it as making noise. You consider it as yelling. Yes. Because that's the confirmation of your bias.
Yes, I got your point.
Okay. Since the day those black women, everybody was waiting online, everybody was coming fresh on fresh serve basis, there was no chaos. Everybody was waiting. The reason there were chaos, let's say the black woman come at 3 o'clock first and she expected to go in because she was first. But then for 1 hour, she's waiting. The doctor is not calling her. That's because the Arab women went through the back door and they are being served and she's exhausted and she's not understanding why the doctor is not calling her. So she keep knocking the door and checking, and you call that noise making because they're fighting for their right. Now, this is what happened when, for me, that's just a little thing that I've done. They imagine black people in higher position of power, what they are told to do to their black people, what they are told to follow as order, as the system. So for me, I knew that, yeah, my job is on the line. So what I do, I break the rule once and for all. And then I said, for me to obey the rule, we got to fix it now. Now, everybody got to wait for their turn, or I'm opening the back door for everyone because I can't control it. So there was my own weak way of fighting it. Imagine those in the most powerful position who can fight it in that way.
And just a quick thing, Vince will say, and that's kind of like with my book on, being in my position as being a police officer. That's what I'm telling each police officer, in your weak way, do something to help your folks and help the community in your way, because you're the first contact with them. You know what I mean? Yes.
Well, I just wanted to say that it points out the importance of us taking action. You know, just like, and I'm still blown away by what you shared with us about being in that prison with 300 other
Yes,
people,
yes,
and you
yes.
telling them what they need to know in order to
Mhm.
attain their freedom, and they still suffering from Stockholm syndrome and sitting there, and then they don't make
And
it out
didn't
alive.
tell him. Then
But
go tell the master. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but
Just like
I
but
was going to get killed.
you took it upon yourself to secure your own freedom. And that meant you and the other person digging your way out of that situation. And it's really kind of a parallel for what we have to do. We
Mhm,
have to
mhm,
dig ourselves out of this situation or continue to be plagued by those who
mhm.
oppress us. So I hope that folks who may not have heard this entire broadcast, I hope they come back to this, listen to the recording, because that story, it just blew me away, brother.
Yes,
I
I
mean,
agree.
I have even more respect for you now because
Yes,
I
sir.
know the spirit that lives in you is the spirit that needs to reside in all of us so that we
Mhm.
don't continue to go down the road that we're going on in certain ways. So kudos to you for sharing that with us. And again, I hope folks that will listen to us. Much success to you on that test. You know, you got a 90 on that one that you mentioned to us, but I think you probably should have gotten 100 on it.
Yeah,
They
I
take
got a
the
90.
power to put us in our place sometimes. So
Mhm.
even though it was 100, he just gave you a 90,
Yeah,
you
I
know, to
can't give
make
him
you
100.
feel good.
I am always, even in my writings, even the education system, sometimes you find, some of the insinuation in the education. Like one assignment I did last week, they were talking about vaccine, that why certain community were speaking against vaccine and all of that. I'm like, I'm pro-vaccine. Vaccine is good. It does everywhere. But when you are critiquing community, and some of the reason they give is like the misinformation, illiteracy, confirmation bias. There were many, many other things. The reason why. So I said, but there are other reasons that you did not look at. I said the lack of trust in the medical establishment.
Mhm, mhm.
I said that's a real reason
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
there's a research that shows that most black men that refuse vaccine, they make allusion to Tuskegee 1932,
Mhm, mhm,
the syphilis experiment,
mhm,
which was done, and then they refused to treat those black people
mhm,
and kept them to continue to live with syphilis while they had a treatment to give it to them, but they left it on them and deceived them, and for them to be able to experiment on them. I said,
mhm,
when you have that in your community, that story persists, it
mhm.
will create a lot of mistrust
Yes.
with you and the medical establishment going forward. So that
Mhm.
reconciliation has to be made. Don't always think that because they are stupid or they are misinformed. There is a spirit of mistrust that is in there. And the professor said, I'm right.
Mhm.
Well, my brother,
Same, same thing there. That's say that level. Because I'm sorry to cut you, Vince, on that, but he touched on something that I written about the same thing. Where my white counterpart with the uniform on, he wondered why black folks don't like police. But, dude, do you know our history
yeah.
involving police? What are
Why
you
you
talking
even
about?
exist? Why you even exist? Why this is even a job, an occupation? Have you ever thought about that? Again, look at history and you can begin to comprehend what the situation is in its reality. We're gonna button it up right
Thank
here
you
because
so much.
again,
Yeah.
uh, just have to move forward. But I want to thank you again, and I'm telling you, this has been profound. Our sister says that she's going to rewind to the beginning of this video. So she's going to listen to the show again so that she can hear that story that you told. And we're going to put up some clips from this show too. So we intend to continue to share your wisdom. So thanks again for joining us. And to all of you who have been listening and watching, do us a favor. Just hit the like button. It's not going to hurt your wrist or your finger. Just hit the like button. Share this video with others that you think might get something out of it, and subscribe to our channels because it really does help us out in bringing this information and this wisdom and knowledge to you. With that, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace, peace, peace. Mm-mm.